Hey everyone, it's Theories1999 here, and welcome back to another Dungeons & Dragons tutorial video. Last time we went over activities outside of combat, and this time we were going to go over spells, so let's dive right in. Spells are a major part of the game, from shooting small bolts of fire to conjuring meteors. Harnessing magic can do amazing things if you know how to do it. Now, there are 8 different schools of spell based on sort of what the spell does. So there's Abjuration, and these are the spells that protect, block, or banish. There's Conjuration, and these are spells that bring things to the caster. There's Divination, and these, let the caster learn something by magical means. There's Enchantment, and these are spells that grant someone some effect or give you some power over another person. There's Evocation, and these are spells that manipulate energy or create something out of nothing. Then there's Illusion, and these sort of alter physical perceptions and can create false images and such. There's Necromancy, and those are involved with the undead. And then there's Transmutations, which change the physical state of some matter. Now you may be thinking, that's really cool, so how do I cast a spell? Well, first you need a spell in your repertoire. Every class can cast spells in some way. 10 of the 12 classes can be committed to spellcraft. 8 of them have their own list, and 6 of them are completely based around spellcasting. When your character is able to choose a spell from a list, these spells each have levels 0 through 9. A level 0 spell is called a cantrip, and they of course have the least powerful effects, but don't underestimate them, or in fact don't underestimate any spell for that matter, because a creative mind can do some amazing things with magic. So how exactly does spellcasting work then? Well, if you want to cast a spell, you have to have something called a spell slot, and these are basically your magical ammunition. And in order to cast a spell, you need to have a spell slot of equal or higher level. And when you cast a spell, it uses up one of those spell slots for now. It can be recovered later. For instance, after a long rest, you regain all of your expended spell slots. And most spells, if you're using a more powerful spell slot, then the spell becomes more powerful as a result. For instance, the spell Cure Wounds heals 1d8 health when you use a level 1 spell slot, but increases by a d8 for each higher spell slot. So if you use a 5th level spell slot, then it heals back 5d8 HP. And also, since cantrips are level 0 spells, they don't have spell slots, you may cast them as many times as you want. Now the next question is, how do you learn spells? Now this next bit might get a bit hard to follow, so just bear with me. The process is slightly different for each class, but the main thing is that you have a set list of spells that you can cast from. For all of these classes, for a spell to be on your list, you must have at least one spell slot of the same level. So if you have up through 8th level spell slots, then you can know spells up through 8th level. Now, you get to make this list of spells based on what spells are available to you and how many spells you can know at once. For the classes of Bard, Ranger, Sorcerer, or Warlock, you start your list as soon as you're able to cast spells. For Rangers, this is at level 2, but for the rest of those classes, it's at level 1. Your class will tell you how many spells you may know, and at each level you may add new spells to your list and may change one known spell to a different spell that you have available on your list. For Clerics, Druids, Paladins, and Wizards, you get to set your list of usable spells each day after a long rest. For Clerics, Druids, and Paladins, you may choose your list from any spell that you're able to know, but for Wizards it's a little different. Wizards maintain a spell book. A spell book may have any number of wizard spells in it, and each day you pick your list from the book. When a wizard runs into a spell either in another spell book or on a spell scroll, he or she may add it to his or her book. Now you may be wondering what a spell scroll is. A spell scroll is a magic item that lets you cast a spell once for free without expending a spell slot. In order to cast the spell, it must be on your class's list of spells, but you don't have to know the spell yourself. If the spell is of a level that you have spell slots for, then you can cast it without a problem. But if it's of a level that you don't have spell slots for, then you have to make an Arcana check to see if you're even able to cast it. And the DC for this check is 10 plus the spell's level. So a 9th level spell scroll would have a DC of 19. Now, you can still use a spell scroll even if your spell slots for that level have already been expended. The point is that you're at a high enough level in order to be able to cast the spell. And in addition to scrolls, there's a number of other magical items that may allow you to cast a spell, such as the boost of levitation, which allow you to cast levitate on yourself. As well as elves start out with one cantrip of their choice, and tieflings naturally learn a few spells at various levels. Now, spells are a complex process with three main components. There's the verbal component, which is the actual words of the spell. Then there's the somatic component, which is the gestures of the spell. And then there's the material component, which is the physical ingredients of the spell. Now, most TMs won't make you have to worry about the material component of a spell unless you're using the spell on an object, such as the spell Shillelagh, which has a club as a material component, and the club is what you're enhancing with magic. For the verbal and somatic components, don't worry about you, the player, knowing what these are because, your character does. But the point of them is that, for instance, if there's words to a spell, you wouldn't be able to do that silently, or if you were holding your breath underwater or something. So you would need to be able to speak in order to cast the spell. Now, there are two main time values associated with a spell. There is the casting time, which is how long before the spell goes into effect. For most spells, the time is one action, so you could just use it during a round of combat. It could also only take a bonus action, so you could do something else on that round, or it could be a set amount of in-game time. There is also the duration of the spell, which is how long it's active for. For most combat spells, the duration is instantaneous, meaning that it does whatever effect, such as healing or damage, and does not have any other lingering effect. For other spells, there is a set time that it remains active for. Now, some timed spells require concentration, which means you have to be focusing on them in order for them to stay in effect. Most activity doesn't break the concentration, so you could still make an attack or cast another spell, but you can only be concentrating on one spell at a time. If you take damage, you must make a Constitution saving throw to maintain your concentration. The DC for this is 10, or half the damage you just took, rounded down, whichever is higher. If your concentration breaks, then the spell's effect ends, and you may also choose to at any time end an active spell that you have casted. There's also spell range, which is the distance at which a spell can be cast. There are 4 types of rangers. There's self, which means that the spell can only be casted on yourself. There's the range of touch, which is yourself and any other creature that you can establish a physical connection with. Then there's set range, which is a specific distance about how far that spell can go out to. And then there's unlimited, which means that the spell can span across any distance. Now, spell range only restricts where the spell can start, but it doesn't necessarily need to stay within that range. For instance, the spell Spiritual Weapon, it has a range of 60 feet, but then on your turn, you can move the weapon that you just conjured up to 20 feet. So on the first turn that you cast the spell, you can make the weapon appear 60 feet away from you, and then move it away another 20 feet. One more thing we have to go over is spell rituals. In order to ritual cast a spell, you must be of a class that has the ritual feature, and you must be using a spell that has the ritual tag on it. Ritual casting takes 10 minutes longer to cast than normal, but it doesn't expend a spell slot. The point of it is to be able to cast more spells, but since it takes 10 more minutes, you couldn't use a ritual spell in combat. And yeah, that's the basics of spellcasting. Next time we'll be going over special effects on characters in-game. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, tell me what you thought about it down in the comments, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!